Hello and welcome to the Molten Truth. I am your host, Zoey Michaels. And if you are tuning in for the first time, then let me just tell you that our show is about people who were going about their lives and something just significant happened that kind of changed their course, or maybe they had a realization that changed their course, that made their life better, made the lives around them better. That is the Molten Truth in a synopsis. More details can be found just on the YouTube or Spotify channel or on zoeymichaels.com, as well as the books I've written. Any information about my blog and the books are on zoeymichaels.com. Today, I am excited to share with you the person that we're going to be interviewing. Her name is Alison McBain, and I love her unique point of view with the book that she's put out called The New Empire. And I think you're going to love that idea too, as well as all these other wonderful things she has done. And so I am going to let her speak for herself. But Alison, just tell us. I think when you and I first spoke, I think you had always wanted to be a writer from a young age. I have that, I think, in my notes.
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for having me on. It's lovely to speak with you again. Yeah, it's something that since I was four, I think first started writing. As soon as I could string words together into a sentence, I was a writer. It took a bit longer to actually get my work into print. I did have a few things printed, like when I was in college. But then, life gets in the way, as you know.
It
And
does.
I didn't get back to it until about over a decade later. And then I started writing for publication seriously. And then now I have several books under my name, lots and lots of short stories and poems. And I don't think I'm going to slow down anytime soon.
I think that's amazing. And I believe your books have won awards. I feel like I read that as well.
Yeah, my latest book, I'm very thankful to say, did get some recognition, some fabulous awards. Actually, my first book did too. So I'm very thankful that the judges of these various awards thought there was a cool story there. I thought there was a cool story there too, but it's nice to have someone else validate that too.
It always is, isn't it? We have
Yeah,
this idea in our head and we put it on paper and we love our stories. I mean, they're
exactly.
like our children to us and they're just the way they're supposed to be. So to have that outside validation means so much when you finally have it right where it needs to be and then someone says, "Yes, I love your work." There's just no
Exactly.
feeling like it.
Well, honestly, because we all have a bit of imposter syndrome, I would say. Like,
Yes,
because no matter how many accomplishments you have, you're always going to be like, who, me? Like you're talking about me. So it's nice to have that outside validation, because honestly, otherwise most writers I think would just go crawl in a corner somewhere and say, I'm never
exactly.
writing again. Exactly. There's so much rejection in any of the creative arts, like acting, writing, music, that it's hard to carry on and persevere. But that's the number one thing that leads you to success, is to just keep on going and keep on believing in yourself.
Absolutely. And talk about, we were talking before we started the show about how busy you kept. And I think, especially during COVID, you kept yourself busy with several projects that included writing every single day.
I did write a lot, mostly last year. I wrote a number of books. Actually, I do have a small press. I call it actually a micro press because it's even smaller than a small press. We do very individual type of things.
Wow.
But we started during COVID, we started publishing a magazine. And just in the keeping with small things, we only publish very, very, very short pieces. So about 100 words
Oh,
for
wow.
short stories, for creative nonfiction, and for poems. And I don't know if you've ever tried writing 100-word story. It's really hard to pack a lot into there. Like, it's not that much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't even envision a story that short
Yeah.
to
It's
have
about a
it.
paragraph, actually. So,
Yeah.
like, imagine a paragraph, and that's a whole story.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting challenge. I may have to try that just to see if I can do it. Um,
Yeah, that would be fun.
right now, I feel like my first book was like the shortest book I could possibly do. I mean, I would call that a micro novel. But it was such a short little book, but I had all the details I wanted in it for a first try. I can't imagine writing anything shorter, but I think I'm going to accept that challenge just to see if I can.
You should, you totally should, and it's a growing, actual subgenre, I think, in fiction. People like something short to read, like when they're taking the train to work or the bus to work or something, like these little short snapshots into fictional life are beautiful. They're wonderful, and they can make you think for the rest of the day. And that's one thing that I love about them, because it invites you into another person's world for just a tiny little bit.
I would think that would also be a great stress reliever. Once upon a time, let me just tell you, I hate telephones. I use them only to talk to family and those people I absolutely have to. And it's because I once upon a time worked in a call center, which is like the worst
Yeah.
possible job. Well, at least
Yeah.
one of the worst. I'm sure there's worse ones than that. But I worked at a company that, strictly speaking, they didn't allow you to read. But sometimes you were like waiting for a call to come in, and you had that dead time where you're like do do do. And so I had these little magazines I had on the corner of my desk, close enough that I could read them without obviously reading them, because I needed that to stay focused. And for me, that was a stress relief as well. So these little micro stories of yours could be a very nice stress relief for people whose job maybe allows for that. And
Exactly. When you
the
just need
excitement.
to step outside of yourself for a minute.
Exactly. So I do love the idea. I'm gonna have to try that. So one of the I mean, you've got so many cool things to choose from, but one of the coolest things I remember when we first spoke was that you you challenged yourself with AI. AI, can put out stories so fast, and you decided, I'm going to challenge AI and put out a story. I think you said every day. So
Well,
you did that for how
every
long?
week I wrote a new book.
Okay. I mean, that's significant.
Exactly, yeah. No, it was fun, and, yeah, part of the framing of my project was around AI, because it was just then that, I conceived of this project about 2 years ago, and AI was just then starting to creep into the creative sphere. There was the writers' strike in Hollywood where they're making demands, like asking for AI not to be taking over their jobs, essentially, and so it was a concern for a lot of writers and creatives and musicians and artists.
Mm.
Um, and at the time I was, doing ghostwriting, I was doing editing. I'm a pretty fast writer, because I've just been doing it for years at this point. And I was talking to a friend, and he asked me, "Well, you're writing a lot of books for other people. When are you going to get back to your own stuff?" I was like, "That's a great point. Like if I can write a book a week for a client, I maybe I can do it for myself too."
Right.
Yeah, and with AI coming up, and instantly producing stories, you type in a prompt and it will spit something out. And the quality of it was not great. It's still not great.
Yeah.
And it takes out the human element of storytelling. I mean, we're all authors because we love to tell stories. We love to, enter our imagination and soar through different worlds. That's why we do it. We love it. And obviously AI doesn't love it. They are just doing it because we're telling them to. So
Right.
yeah, so that made me want to see how fast I could write, see if I could be sort of an inspiration to other writers to, say, no AI here. I'm just going to write just by the sweat of my brow and create, a multitude of stories. My goal was to do it for a year. I didn't get quite that far. I did
Okay.
produce 34 books. So I still have some sitting on the back burner that I'll eventually get to, but I do have now a number of different books that I'm working on editing and getting out there.
Absolutely. And I mean, wow. What a great thing to have in your back pocket, that you can focus on editing these and potentially publish 34 books. I mean,
Exactly.
I think that's pretty great. And just the fact that you thought to challenge that, and just show that a human could be that productive and have that human focused creativity. Um, I won't lie. I do appreciate AI. I do appreciate it, for maybe helping me with a moment of writer's block, or for maybe taking my thought that's mostly formed, but maybe making suggestions on how I can improve it. So, I unashamedly, I do use AI to help me along sometimes.
Well, definitely
Um,
a lot of people do. It's definitely in every single, I mean, it's in all the search engines. It's in, every program you can imagine that you can get online.
yeah,
But it's a tool like any other. And the whole
exactly.
conversation about it taking over for people, it shouldn't take over for creatives, especially because
Yeah,
again, we're doing it because we love to. If
yeah,
it's used as a tool, yeah, that's what it's meant to be used for. It's not meant to replace the storytellers.
exactly. Because all of our stories are unique. How we were raised, the people around us who influenced what ultimately goes into our story. We write from life,
Yep,
and that's the
definitely.
difference. But yeah, it is. It's interesting though. People get very worked up about that. It's quite a polarizing subject around certain people.
I mean, it is. I
So
mean, there's also other aspects to it. I won't go too far into them, but like the whole legal issue, there's a lot of lawsuits
mhm,
right now over, taking authors' works without their permission or artists'
yeah,
works without their permission. So there are some issues to be ironed out
yeah,
with it. And there should be no shortcuts to producing
mhm,
something that people use. Um,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it,
Yeah,
it it is polarizing in a number of different ways, but it's also been helpful. Like it has literally saved lives
yeah,
when applied to the medical field. It's produced diagnoses for people who had no diagnosis from doctors. So it has been
yeah.
helpful. But yeah, we're still working it out. And like any new technology, eventually, hopefully, we'll work out some of the kinks.
Growing pains, you gotta love them.
Exactly.
But I'm with you on the medical field of things. My day job involves, talking to patients firsthand, and there there was a day right before I left for vacation. I was like, oh, AI would have been so helpful in making sure that I treated that patient correctly. Thank goodness I
Mhm.
had someone else behind me that was like, did you catch that? Like, oh no, no, I did not. Thank you. Glad the patient's okay. But yeah, sometimes it's nice to have that backup.
That's
So
true.
I do want to get into your book. I want you to share with people about the new empire, because again, what a fascinating concept. And I'm going to let you speak for yourself because I won't do it justice. But tell us about this book.
Well, it's a fun alternate history. So basically, it asks, what if? What if history had changed at one point in the past? Where would we be today? Or in my book, in the 1700s, where it's set. So my what if was, what if the Chinese Empire during its expansionist period had actually reached the Americas and established permanent trading ties with the indigenous populations, years before Europeans did? How would that have changed history? And there's a bit of archaeological evidence that there, and this is what spurred the idea of the story, reading an article about this, that there was some factual evidence that Chinese ships did land on the coast of South America. So it could really have happened. They didn't pursue it. They didn't pursue any ties with the peoples here, but they definitely could have, and it could have completely reworked history. In my book, for example, I suppose that with this strong alliance, that the indigenous populations could have banded together and to form a world superpower and stopped European expansion and really changed history. So yeah, it was a fun story to tell. A lot of research though.
I don't doubt it. It does make me wonder, though, just about so many things, including if it had been the Chinese that had, landed and come up to like North America, would that also have made an impact on the indigenous people here? And if so, would it have been better for them, or the same, or worse? It's just so many possibilities that unlock with that idea of, wow, if they had landed first, what would life be?
Well,
Just
plus, the Chinese during their sort of exploration, they weren't interested in colonizing like
yeah.
Europeans were. They were more interested in trade. So they would not have had the same impact on the populations. They would have said, okay, as long as we have a great trade alliance, we're okay. So that's
Right.
sort of what I did. So it allowed again, this superpower to take precedence in the Americas.
Yeah. Now, I think some of your background, I think some of your education or perhaps your family lineage played into just this whole idea, as well as, what you learned about them landing on South America. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm a history buff.
Okay.
So, history is one of the majors I studied in college, but I've always loved it. Just as long as I've been reading historical books. Like back when, my friends were reading comic books, I had my nose buried deep in a history book, like
Mhm.
for grown-ups. So that was definitely one of my loves. I always wanted to write an alternate history. And some of my earlier works do have sort of, little tidbits of history tied in, but this was my first major historical work. But yeah, I'm also half Asian, so like I really wanted to tie in
Mhm.
um, that as sort of like a motivating force. My main character is in my book is Chinese. And he's someone who came over to the New World as a slave, and is actually sort of in a position of uh, little power over
Mhm.
his own life. So part of his journey is to basically find freedom for himself and for his people who are enslaved in the New World.
Yeah, very cool. So I guess an obvious question is, was this book conceived and written before or after your AI challenge? Or was that maybe
Oh,
one of the first books you did during your AI challenge? I'm kind of curious.
no, it was definitely before.
Okay.
And yeah, it started out life. Have you heard of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month? Oh,
I think your
sorry, I
screen
must have
froze.
cut out for a second. I didn't.
Yeah, you did. So yeah, I haven't heard of them. So that's
Oh,
about where
okay.
we left off.
Okay, so National Novel Writing Month has been going on for over a couple decades,
Oh
and it's
wow.
in the month of November. And it started out just sort of as a group of friends getting together, saying, "Hey, I bet we could write 50,000 words in a month," and they did. And then it's spread from there, and it became international. They have since this. They closed down at the end of last year, and they're not doing it anymore.
Mm.
But this project started out as a National Novel Writing Month project. And so I wrote the first 50,000 words of it, and then stopped.
Oh.
Stopped writing it because it was such a huge endeavor, and required so much research. But then um, I I heard about this contest from a friend of mine, and part of the winnings of the contest, if you placed first, was to have your book published by a wonderful press, and receive a marketing blitz to launch your book, and to work one-on-one with industry professionals, agents, publicists. And it seemed like a great opportunity. So I was like, okay, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring.
Well, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And so I did. And you would spend a couple weeks again being mentored by these wonderful industry professionals, honing your material. So at that point I was like, I got to finish this book. If I'm going to enter it into the contest,
Mm.
I got to finish it, and I did.
Yeah.
And I was thankful enough. I was so grateful that I came in first, and so that launched my book. That launched the awards that I won for it. It was
Mm.
such an amazing experience, and I can't say enough for writers out there. Like always give it a chance. Like you never know what will be the next step for your work.
Well, that's so true. I know. So I get these emails from these different resources about, hey, we're looking to for these original stories about this or that. And I have to admit, something caught my eye about like a sci-fi western. And I've already got ideas like percolating up here about that. I'm like, ooh, I could probably roll with that. So I haven't started on it yet, but I do have some ideas. But it is interesting the things that kind of take you by surprise and you think, wow, that's a great idea. And suddenly these ideas start popping into your head about how you could take that story, even if it's just something someone
Exactly.
else says or a lyric in a song.
Yeah,
But
I always like to say, because people ask where my ideas come from, and I'm like,
mhm.
I always have ideas. I have so many ideas. Like, I just don't have
Constantly
time
writing
to
it
write
down.
them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I've got like this whole list in my phone. Like anytime my idea pops in my head, I'm like, oh, let me add this to the list of concepts and ideas. Because yeah, I think of it like as a an ecosystem, like the rain cycle. I think of it as a creative ecosystem because music inspires ideas for books, books inspire ideas for music or movies, etc. It's all part of that ecosystem, I think.
Definitely. Actually, in poetry, there's a term for it. It's called ekphrastic poetry. So that means that your poem is inspired by another piece of artwork. So it could be a painting, it could be a song, it could be, a book, but you write a poem based on, your inspiration of that other work.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
it just feeds off each other, and
It
yeah,
does.
it's an amazing thing the way it works. It's just so, I don't know if cohesive is the right word, but I just love the way that, we feed off each other, and you might just say something random and it just sparks with someone else and they run with it, and then something they say might spark someone else, and it just the way it feeds and continues to feed. It just amazes me the way that works.
No, that's true. That's why I love writing groups. I love going to writing conferences. I love speaking at
Yeah.
conferences. Just because you never know what's going to spark an idea. And working with other authors is you learn as much as you give, right? So
So true.
exactly. Yeah, you're always
Yeah.
learning, no matter where you are at any stage of your career.
Absolutely. I was having a conversation with another writer, and I think her name was Linda Williams, but she was talking about how she likes to actually read other writers even while she's writing. Whereas most of us, I think, prefer to, well, we don't want to accidentally plagiarize someone, so we kind of like books away and let me focus on my story. But she made an interesting point that sometimes those other authors, something they've said could spark a thought or an idea that's not plagiarism, but just kind of like, well, that's an interesting approach, but I think I'm going to take it this direction instead, kind of feedback without it being direct feedback. So it was an interesting point, in favor of continuing to read and enjoy other people's books, even though you're busy writing your own. Just
Yeah,
a
no,
unique point
that's
of view.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I was starting out writing, I would be more influenced if I was reading something at the same time, so I couldn't do that at all.
Right.
But now, yes, I have my own voice. I have my own writing style. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to read other people's work when I'm writing.
And I think you're right. It's really about being certain about your own thoughts, having your
Mhm.
voice defined so that you are not influenced. Kind of like someone who's new to singing, being next to a very strong singer and being pulled into into the way that they sing
Exactly.
instead of staying in their zone. But that's another life, another world too. Um, I tangent squirrels, but one of the things I noticed, because I was looking at your website beforehand, just refreshing my memory, I actually noticed two things. It looks like you are in another contest for some of your work, and you're waiting for results at the end of this year.
Ah, yes, the Alpine Fellowship. I was so thrilled to hear the news. I made the short list, along with some authors I admire, Jenna Butler, Paula da Costa, who are both Canadian. So I'm like, yes, go Canada. We're doing great.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, I love entering contests. I love sending my work out there, and I write in all styles. So I have everything from, the very short fiction we were talking about. I
Hmm.
do short stories, I do poetry, and then of course novels. So yeah, I'm happy to try anything, and if something catches my fancy, I I'll throw some work at it. I mean, you never know what will stick.
True that. Which brings me to the other thing, because you mentioned all styles, which included, I think, some children's books I saw, and you also did some cartoons, or maybe you still do some cartoons. I'm not sure about how current that is, but I did notice those on your website.
Yeah, I started oh man, I don't remember how far back. It was several years ago. So
Mhm.
I'm a mom of three, and you know, when kids are young, they can be frustrating.
Yes, yes, they
I mean,
can,
when they get older too, obviously.
just in a
So
different way.
exactly. So when my youngest was quite young, I think I don't know, I want to say four maybe,
Mhm.
3 or 4. I like to laugh. I like to see the humor in things. So
Yeah.
I just started drawing. I just started, writing down some of my frustrations, I guess,
Mhm.
almost with being a mom. And so, like, I could turn them into that into something funny and something that others could enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started out when my daughter was quite young, and just every walk of life. Um, and yeah, it was a lot of fun to to get that out. It has been on pause. I haven't had a lot of time recently to do the cartoons. I still have some that I've drawn. I haven't inked that are sitting in my back pocket pretty much. So eventually I will get back to it.
Mhm.
Now, even though my kids are a bit older now, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, again, I love, I love being able to share things that I found out after I started publishing the cartoon, found out
Yeah.
how universal these things are.
That's what makes them funny, though. That's what makes them relatable. It's like, it's
Exactly.
except that the rest of us just don't have the talent to actually draw these things and put it together, whereas you do.
Well, I'm not an artist by any means. So, like, if you're looking for Kelvin and Hobbes level art, you're not gonna find it in my stuff. But yeah, there's a reasonable resemblance to me and my kids in
Mhm.
my cartoons. And in fact, the funny thing is, now that they're older and can actually, they can read the cartoons and
Yeah.
see the humor, the mom sense of view, point of view a bit. They
Mhm.
love them. They actually think they're really funny. So I'm like,
That's
"Ha, I
great.
did one thing right. You guys are laughing at my jokes."
That's big. Kids are the toughest
It is
critics. I
big.
mean,
They are such yeah, they are definitely my toughest critic.
without a doubt. You know, um, talking about the drawing aspect, I have always been a fan of Gary Larson, The Far Side, because that's kind
Oh,
of
I
the
love
way my
Gary Larson.
warped mind. Yeah, I mean his humor like no other.
Yeah.
But he has this book, The Prehistory of the Far Side, which explains like how he became a cartoonist and some of the challenges he had. And one of the things he said was that one of the reasons he kept his cartoons just that one cube. I don't know what the right terminology, but just that one
Panel, yeah.
box.
Mhm.
Thank you. See, you know the terminology. Was that he did not really have confidence in his drawing ability, but he figured he could manage with that, and that he credited that with helping him to become a better artist because he had to stick to that one panel. So you never, as long as people can recognize what you're trying to get across, I think that makes you a good artist. At least Gary Larson level, right?
Exactly. I mean, and that is high praise. I would love to be Gary Larson level, so
Yep.
yeah, we'll see.
So, well, exactly. Out of curiosity, because my mind works this way, is there any thoughts about maybe combining some of your cartoons with an actual story and creating a book that includes cartoons?
Um, I would love to do that. So this is one reason why I don't consider myself an artist. My aunt is a fabulous artist. So she
Ah,
does this professionally. She's won awards for her work. She's represented Canada on the international level. She is like
okay.
amazing. And watching her work, she can produce something like that. She is so fast.
Mm,
When I draw, like, when I write, I am super fast. Like, if she tried
mhm.
to write a story, she would probably look at me and, like, say, "No." I can't do that. So, like, when I draw, it is a very slow process. To create one comic, it will take me a week, literally. Like I have to think of the concept, and then I have to like I sketch it, and then I ink it, and then I fix the mistakes that I made. So like I am ridiculously slow. And people have asked me, "Oh, well, why don't you do it on the computer?" I would be even slower on the computer than doing it by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe eventually I might do one, but I think if I ever did, it would be one book produced in my entire life because I would not have time for more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads me to another question. Now that I know your aunt's an artist, have you
Mm.
two ever collaborated or thought about collaborating with your words and her art?
Oh man, we've talked about it. She wants to do a kids book, and I was like, "Oh, I would love to do that. I would love to do that with you." Again, she's super busy. I'm super busy, so eventually we will. I am very strongly believe in that we will collaborate, and I would love to do that with her. But yeah, we'll have to figure it out.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. But, just because my mind goes that direction, curiosity had to ask.
No, eventually we will. We're both on board with that.
Absolutely. So we're getting down to our last 10, 15 minutes. So we've got time. There's no rush. But um, do you have any, suggestions to people out there who maybe like you started out early in life thinking, wow, I want to be someone who writes books, or someone who later in life realized that maybe they wanted to write books, but they didn't fully understand that's what they should be doing? Any kind of advice for people out there?
Definitely. The only difference between a published author and an unpublished author is one thing, and that is persistence.
Hmm.
As I mentioned before, there's so much rejection in any of the creative fields, especially in writing, as I found. I have thousands of rejections under my belt. So you could just look at, oh wow, she's successful. She's has these books that have won awards. She's done all of this stuff in her life, but there it's a slog. It's a slog getting there. Um, and your own biggest advocate for your work will always be yourself. So just persist. I truly believe, and this is one reason why I love to work with new authors when I put on my editor hat. Everyone has a story to tell.
Yeah.
Everyone has something that needs their own unique voice to get it out there. And it might just be one story, or it might be, 34 stories that you need to get out. But just persevere. It doesn't have to be your chosen medium. In fact, one author who I'm very good friends with, he didn't start writing until after he retired. He had never written anything before, and now he's probably one of the most prolific authors I know. He has 10 books, 500 short stories published, poems galore, and he's past 80 now, and he's not slowing down.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so exactly. So it's never too late to start either. So even if it's not something that you thought you'd ever do, sit down, write down a few thoughts, see what happens. It could be
That
magic.
could be. Would you, I mean, did that friend, did he take any kind of courses, or did he just decide one day, I'm gonna just start writing?
Oh no, he just decided to write. He
I
was like,
love
I think he
that.
was bored. I think he was bored in his retirement. He's like, man, I
Mhm.
gotta exercise my brain. So he started writing stories. But he always loved reading,
Yeah.
but had never really tried his hand at it. And yeah, now he's again, this is the thing that gets him up in the morning. He loves it. He loves it so much.
I love that. And, I think that really is the key. I think you have to love reading to want to be a writer. I've never heard of a writer who didn't also just love books from the get-go. Maybe there's one out there, haven't met them yet. But I think there is that love of books, love of stories inside you, and that's what causes you then to want to create stories of your own. So,
Well, definitely. I mean, but there's also a lot of different mediums. So there's film writing too, script writing. So you might love movies and want to tell a story through film. So
yeah.
there's not just a limit on how you get your words out there. And nowadays we live in the golden age of publishing. You can self-publish. You can get traditionally published. There are small presses. There's magazines. any way you can send your story out, there's a way to do it, pretty much.
That is true, and thank goodness for it. We're actually going to do that. So a very dear friend who happened to be my niece's mother-in-law, she had spent, I think, 30 years writing a story. She had this story in her head, and she finally finished writing it, but she passed away unexpectedly. So we're
Oh.
going to be publishing it posthumously for her. So we're probably going to go the self-published route to make that happen. But I am trying to find, because as I told you before we started recording, we have started asking questions. Here it is. So each person being interviewed gets a random question from the person before them, and then you get to leave one for the next person.
Nice.
So
I love this game of telephone. This is awesome.
it's been pretty fun so far, I have to say. I mean, some of the answers I've gotten have been very profound, or at least interesting. And certainly some of the questions, as I told you, the blue hair one. So like, okay. So the last guest asked the question, what was the most pivotal moment in your life up to this moment?
Um, I'm going to have to say, having children. Just because I always wanted to be a mom. It's something that, some people don't know if they want to be a parent or not. But I always wanted to. And so, well, it was tough. Parenting is not easy. Well, it's tough having kids. It was probably the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. And I love them to bits, and I'm so proud of them. And I learn from them every single day, something new. Um, Again, like they're teaching me stuff I never knew. And that's wonderful. And I have three, and they're each their own individual person, and it's amazing to me how they're turning out, to just be such wonderful people. Um, yeah, so that completely changed my life, for the better.
That is one of the best answers, because truly, I mean, isn't that what the stuff that my life is made of? It's about having family and having
Yeah.
these children, shaping these minds for the future. So I love that answer. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah, I love they're great. And I probably just embarrassed them terribly because two of
oh,
them are teenagers.
they'll get over it. One day they'll look back and go, "Mom loved us."
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll have a lot to look back on, and how great that they have not only these video interviews of you, but also just all of your works, the cartoons, the books. You know, that's something extra special they'll look back on with really a lot of pride in their mother. So that's amazing.
I hope so.
So so I warned you about possibly having a random question of your own. So have you had time to kind of think of something you might want for the next guest?
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna I'm gonna be boring and go with a question about books.
Okay, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Um, what would you say is your favorite book, and why? Why did it inspire you?
Sure. Favorite book.
And it could be something
And
from, when they were a kid, like I was inspired a lot by things as a kid, books as a
yeah,
kid. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Kid or any time in life. I've got it noted. So we'll see what the next person at our conga line
Oh, very
says.
exciting.
So as we get ready to shut down, I just want to invite um, our audience to, like, share, follow. We launched initially a month ago on YouTube only, but now we are on Spotify, we are on Apple, and we're going to be expanding. So tell people, let them see not just our interview with Alison, but all the interviews before and after. Welcome them to the Molten Truth podcast. So thank you so much for joining us, Allison. I've so enjoyed having our conversation, and I didn't even get to touch on the review you did for one of our future guests, but we'll talk about that maybe during another time because I'm sure you and I will talk again. But
Awesome.
thank
Well,
you so
thank
much
you
for
so
coming.
much. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, here we go.